man, when I first walked in this building, I felt the love. I felt like the people wanted me to be here. I finally now have a routine where I know I need to take a little bit more time off, but in my younger days, you know, it was no time off. It was maybe a week, and before the Super Bowl, I was already training for the next season. So Ed Ogeron is coming to my house, and we lived in a trailer, and he used to drive his Hummer all the way up into the house. And my mom hated that he was destroying our grass.
Hello again, everybody. So good to see you. Thanks for joining us for another installment of Club 46, driven by Bridgestone. All through the season, we've been sitting down with all-time great Cleveland Browns. Today, we're giving you a little bit of a curveball. We're sitting down with an active great of the Cleveland Browns, Jarvis Landry. Jarvis, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So in this series, we go all the way back to the beginning. We try to find out how you got to where you are today. And in that vein, let's go back to your early days growing up in Louisiana. What was life like for a young Jarvis Landry?
I wouldn't say it was too interesting. I'd say it was simple. You know, coming up in Louisiana, small country town, Convent, Louisiana. You know, everybody knows everybody. Everybody doesn't lock their car doors. No real crimes.
Yeah.
You know, nothing like that. Just football, and that's it.
When did you get involved with sports?
From an early age, it was embedded in my family. You know, my uncles, my brothers, my mom played basketball. You know, all of those things. It was like it was already set up. I think I was born with like balls in my crib. You know, so.
Was it just football, or did you do everything?
I did everything. I started out baseball. Actually, was my first sport.
Really?
My first love. Actually.
What position?
I played everywhere in baseball.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Ultimately, I ended up being a shortstop. But
yeah.
You know, when I first started up, I was everywhere.
What about football? At what age did you first realize I'm pretty good at this?
Yeah. Well, I always played in my neighborhood, in the park or whatever it was. And for some reason, I always seemed to play with the older kids. And I think that's where a lot of my toughness and physicality came from.
Right.
And I mean, I can remember going back to being 7, 8 years old, you know, running barefoot, you know, in the street, you know, playing football. So.
Yeah. Who was your first idol?
My first idol probably my brother.
Yeah.
My brother who he idolized Jerry Rice. So that's how I became to start learning about football and learning about these guys that, you know, I never really paid attention to because, again, Ken Griffey Jr. was the best athlete in the world.
That was your guy?
That was my guy.
Yeah.
I didn't, you know, and
what was it that you liked about him? His swag, his game?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. His swag, his game, you know, left-handed stance, coming, you know, all of that. The bat swing, the bat
So
flip.
did you practice the Griffey swing?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the finish?
But I was right-handed, so.
So you just took it over to the other
right,
side?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So at what point did you realize, Jarvis, that this is more than just a way for me to have a good time? This possibly could lead to a free education and who knows, maybe a professional career. How old were you when that kind of sunk in?
I'll probably say my ninth grade season. I started playing varsity when I was in 8th grade.
Really?
Yeah. And then the next year, we played East Ascension, which is a town near where I stay, where I live, where I went to high school, and I scored 5 touchdowns in that game. And
as an 8th grader?
As a 9th grader.
Oh, okay, as a
ninth
freshman.
Grader. Yeah, freshman. And at that point, I was like, okay, like, you know, I could do this every game, you know? And
you're playing at that point. Some of those kids in high school are men.
Yeah, and they were bigger than me. I was a lot smaller than I am now in high school. So
wide receiver?
Wide receiver.
Yeah.
Wide receiver. So making plays, and eventually I was just, you know, like, man, like, if I could do this every game, you know, never really thinking about the scholarship part of it or the future. Obviously, you know, I wanted to make it to the NFL, but just didn't know how the road would be or what road to take.
Right.
Know? I just know that I had to keep scoring touchdowns.
Let's talk about your high school game, because as a freshman, you're scoring 5 touchdowns against a powerhouse team.
Yeah.
What is it about Louisiana when you look at the caliber of players that they put, not just in D1, but ultimately to the NFL? What is it about that area that produces such amazing talent and usually skills position players?
Honestly, I don't know. You know, I think for us, football is like a religion. You know, just like you hear about the stories in Texas and the stories of the fast guys in Florida. You know, Louisiana, you kind of get your all-around athletes, your all-around players, guys that could really play both sides of the football and Ed Reed was a guy that kind of grew up in the district, and he probably was one of the guys that set the tone the most. I know from my brother's era, but once I began to understand football, and probably my 10th, 11th grade year, who Ed Reed actually was. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I knew of him, but like
Yeah.
who he was and what he meant to our parish, our district, our little town in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Understanding that, wow, like all of these guys come from here. Glenn Dorsey went to East Ascension, the team that I scored the 5 touchdowns against. And it's amazing. It's amazing.
At what point did you start hearing from colleges? What year?
Sophomore season.
Sophomore year. So you're a sophomore and you're getting these letters from schools. What's your take on the future at that point? What are you thinking is going to become of Jarvis Landry?
At that point, I honestly didn't know. I was just kind of excited that people actually saw and knew what I was doing and the player that I was. I always, all the time, see the photographs of like Reggie Bush and all these guys, like they laying down on the floor with their boxes of letters around them, all the letters, and I'm like, I can't wait for that to be me.
Right.
And I think you had to wait, back then you had to wait until you were a sophomore before you can get official letters and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't know if it still works like that, but
They started pouring in as a sophomore?
They started coming in.
Did you save all of them at first?
I did. I'm sure.
At what point did you say this is not a big deal anymore and you threw it out?
Well, my mom decided that I was going to go to LSU, so she just stopped showing me the mail. She stopped giving me the mail, told the coaches stop giving me mail.
So how did that go? Did mom really just tell you, look, it's LSU or nothing?
Yeah, pretty much.
And were you good with that?
I mean, I was good with it, obviously, because I'll be home. Glenn Dorsey, who was my first cousin, he went there. My brother was in Baton Rouge at Southern University at the time. And it just, it was right. It was family. I hadn't been really traveled outside of Louisiana ever. So it was good to stay in town.
I love asking this question of guys that were heavily recruited. If not the school you chose, where would have it been?
Oh, man. So I had an interesting recruiting process because Frank Wilson was a guy that was the receiver coach at Tennessee University, along with Lane Kiffin, Ed Ogeron, that crew. Right?
Yeah.
Frank then takes the running back coach job at LSU. So I was going to commit to Tennessee because of Frank Wilson, who was
Really?
Yeah, he's a New Orleans native.
Yeah.
From Louisiana. Went up there, it was my first camp, and I'm like, all right, this is perfect. Have opportunity to play up here. It's cool, whatever. He goes to LSU. I'm like, all right, now this makes it even more interesting. Then Lane Kiffin gets fired from Tennessee, goes back to USC. Now USC becomes in the recruiting process, which I wasn't getting recruited by USC, but
You weren't prior to that.
No.
But Lane's all over you for that.
Exactly. So Ed Ogeron is coming to my house. My mom didn't like that, and I probably shouldn't say this because he's an LSU coach now, but but he had a black Hummer that he used to rent, I guess, when he came in town.
Sure.
And we lived in a trailer, and he used to drive his Hummer all the way up into the house. And my mom hated that he was destroying our grass. So she was like,
So
you're not
Ed
going to
driving
USC.
on your grass may have kept you from becoming a Cali kid.
Absolutely.
That's pretty funny.
Absolutely.
Would you have gone to USC?
I would have. I
Really
would have. Yes. Yes. I mean, Reggie Bush, again, one of my favorite college players. I referenced him a little bit earlier, but yeah.
So if not LSU, USC, most likely.
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder how things might have turned out differently for you had you gone to USC?
No, I'm not. I don't really think like that.
Yeah.
I think all things happen for a reason, and
Sure.
I went to LSU, and
Yeah.
I'm here.
So talk about the transition from being a superstar at the high school level to being an incoming freshman at LSU where everybody was the best player on their high school team. Was there a transition period where you looked around for a minute and said, maybe I can't do it here?
No, it was never that point. I was definitely, I'm sure Odell and a couple of guys that I played with will tell you, I definitely was one of the confident guys coming in that.
Confident?
Confident.
Or cocky?
Both confident. I like confident.
Okay, more confident. All right. Odell may have been cocky.
No, he wasn't.
No?
He wasn't, and I think, it's always good to be around an elite company because you can only either your level of performances are going to rise or you're going to, get kicked out the door pretty much.
Yeah.
So, just find ways to, make the transition easy, just working hard, learning from guys like Russell Shepard, Tyrann Mathieu, Jordan Jefferson, so many guys, so many great leaders that kind of paved the way to help me, make the transition.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time you met Odell?
Yeah.
Where'd you meet him?
I met him at a 707 camp in Alabama.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd it go?
We lost the camp. We made it to the semifinals.
Yeah.
We ended up losing this to 707 camp. But I had been hearing about this guy from New Orleans, this receiver who's, we were like 1 and 2 in the state for as top receivers. And I finally got a chance to meet him and see what he was capable of. And I'm thinking to myself, like, wow.
What was that first meeting like? Did you know right away this could be a special friendship?
Yes.
How?
Not just really, I guess not anticipating that it would go beyond Alabama, but I think just, recognizing, his genuineness, recognizing his ability, his playmaking ability, and almost kind of wanting to learn how he do some of the things that he do, and from the camp we started texting. Then before you know it, I'm hanging out in New Orleans with him, and he's hanging out in Convent with me, and he's like, where you want to go to school? He wanted to go to Miami. My mom told me I'm going to LSU. So I told him I'm going to LSU.
So you had to convince him of LSU. Was that hard?
It wasn't. I think at a point where our relationship grew to, he was just he came to me one day and he was like, bro, wherever you go, I'm coming.
Really?
Just like that.
Yeah.
And he got invited to the All-American Army game.
Right.
And he committed to LSU.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you talk about what you two could accomplish together at LSU? Were there ever conversations about being a national champion, having two dynamic receivers in that same offense?
Yeah, that was the plan. One of the things that we talked about, I know for fact, our senior year of high school was just, being legendary, pushing each other each and every day. And when we got to LSU, it became a bit more of a transition for me than it was for him because I got hurt. So I broke my foot going into the season. So I pretty much become the fourth receiver, and he pretty much becomes the second, third receiver. And now he's getting the playing time, and I'm pretty much just a special teams player.
Right.
But
was that tough for you?
It was tough. Just knowing that if I don't break my foot, what could have happened. But at the end of the day, everything worked out. My last 2 seasons, was able to lead the team in receiving. So.
Did you ever have a conversation with Odell about maybe one day playing together in the NFL? Because obviously both are going to be highly drafted. Almost never could you expect that these two caliber receivers could end up on the same team. Did you ever go there with Odell?
Yeah. Our junior year, we talked about it. Didn't think it would be possible just because of what you just said.
Right.
We potentially could be 2 high draft picks that whoever we get drafted by, we're with that team for the rest of our career.
Yeah.
And just knowing our attitude and work ethic and things like that. But, one of the things we did talk about was playing together and how special it would be. We gave all these scenarios. Okay, if it's the 3rd year, it's the 4th year, it's the last contract.
Right.
We're gonna find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And it happened here in Cleveland a lot sooner than probably we both expected.
Yeah.
But it's something that I feel like in years to come can really retire together.
Yeah.
In a sense.
So you're finishing up at LSU and you're getting ready to make the next transition, which is obviously being drafted into the NFL. Talk about that process, going through the draft interviews and the combines and the workouts and everything else. What was that experience like for you?
It was tiring. It was tiring. Just going from training right after the bowl game. Going straight into training, then from training going to the combine, and you're pretty much, as soon as you get off the plane, you're from the hospital to meetings again.
Yeah.
You barely sleep. Then you got to go drug tests at 3 o'clock in the morning the next day. So it was real tiring. The combine didn't work out the way I wanted to.
Why not?
Just didn't run a good time.
Right.
Just didn't run a good time. Ended up leaving, not finishing the combine with a hamstring injury.
Right.
Come back in pro day, run a better time.
Yeah.
And, was able to run routes and things like that, which I couldn't do at the combine.
Right.
So that became like the stressful part of the whole situation, just knowing that was probably about one knock coming out the draft.
If I had asked you the night before the draft, who's going to select you, who would you have said?
Man, I probably would have said Seattle.
Really?
Yes.
Did they leave you with the impression they were going to take you?
No, they didn't really leave me with the impression. It's just, I think that was one of the teams that I talked to, connected with.
Yeah.
Golden Tate was leaving. I felt like
they had a need.
Yeah, which, it didn't work out, but it's cool.
Do you remember that? Do you, like, when you played against Seattle, do you remember thinking, okay, these guys?
Not so much because it didn't feel like, they had to make that decision. And I think that, that was, if you really go back to that draft, they traded out of 32, let Minnesota back in.
Yeah. And
then Minnesota takes Teddy Bridgewater.
Right.
And then the next day, they end up taking Paul Richardson.
Okay.
And I'm like, what?
Right.
No knock to Paul Richardson. But
No, I know, yeah.
Like, really?
How did you spend the draft? How were you watching the draft?
So I didn't go to the draft. I spent it with my family in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
We rented out like a hotel. We rented out all of the like the ballroom floor, and we had a couple of TVs set up, in a couple different rooms, and pretty much everybody I knew was there.
A lot of family, a lot of friends. Was that nervous for you?
It was nervous because the first day, thinking that I'm gonna get drafted on this first day. There's cameras,
right.
There's hats everywhere, family everywhere, and it just seemed like it was right. It was set for me to go on, which was my part of my dreams.
Yeah.
My goal was to be selected in the first round,
Sure.
no matter where, no matter when, just
Right.
in the first round. And the first round goes by, and Seattle trades out 32, Minnesota trades in, picks Teddy Bridgewater, and immediately I'm just heartbroken.
Yeah.
Heartbroken. Go to my room, cry.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I didn't achieve my goal. I feel like I let my family down, in a sense. And I didn't know. I didn't know what day 2 would be. I didn't know what day 3 would be. I didn't know if I'd get drafted or,
You started wondering that.
Yeah, I started wondering. There was a time in the draft, the second day, the day that I got drafted, that receivers are getting taken, and I'm like, wait, these guys have nowhere near the numbers I have. They didn't play the type of strength of opponents that I have played. Like, only thing they was a little bit faster than I am. So
it really goes to show how much they look at that clock.
And it is so upsetting, but that's also a part of the passion and the energy that I play with. That you think the fast guys are the guys that really translate, but if you really look at history, the slower guys, the most complete receivers, route running, catching ability, they hold all the records. They break all the, they have all the yards and the catches.
Historically.
And
it's oftentimes are overlooked in the draft, come from small schools sometimes.
That's it.
How much did that experience, going to your room that night and experiencing that disappointment, how much do you think that had to do with shaping the player that you've become today?
It lit a fire underneath me.
Did it?
It gave me more of an edge. It gave me something that, I probably may have never tapped into if I didn't win in the first round, but it gave me something that I still hold on to this day.
You do? You still play with that chip?
Absolutely. There was 17 guys taken before me. 15 guys taken before me. Receivers.
Right.
That, and it's, 4 of us now. Like, in the sense, like, that's really, like, you could really talk about.
So you want to go out there every time you put your cleats on a football field and show all of the teams.
Yeah, I said to myself that night that I got drafted to Miami, I said to myself, because I pretty much got the same question, how do you feel about, all of these other receivers getting drafted for you? And all I could say to them is just wait to the end.
Right.
Let the end result, let the numbers tell in the end.
Yeah.
And then we'll see.
So how gratifying is it to you to know that no player in the NFL has had the success at receiver in his first 5 years as you? Not just the guys that were drafted ahead of you, ever.
Right. Well, it's credit to the other 31 teams that passed over me.
You give thanks to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. They were part of it. Now God has His own plan for everybody, and I think that again, the way that I began to work and the little things that I kept with me that I can just go back to in my mind, or that feeling that I felt watching these guys get drafted, not out of envy or not out of just feeling like I was, like I deserved not to be the 63rd pick, the 15th receiver,
Right.
And to do what I've been doing, and I still just don't feel like it's enough. But to a lot of people, it's history, and I respect all of the guys that made history before I did. But
you have more to prove.
I have more to go.
So you go to Miami, and you come in as a guy that everybody knows from your college career. What was that transition like from college to the pro game? Did it take a while to adjust to the speed of the game?
It actually didn't. So to take you back, my junior year, Coach Cam Cameron comes in and calls plays for us. Mm-hmm. Coach Cam Cameron's background, he comes from Baltimore the year that they went to Super Bowl.
Right.
So he introduces us to a digit system. Before the digit system, we were all concepts. So Houston and Texas were plays. Then we started going to 678, which is, if you know the route tree, you know what route you have.
Right.
So when I went into the NFL, I went straight into the digit system. So I didn't have anything to learn. I already
knew it.
I already knew it. So that allowed me to play fast. That gave me a little jump on other guys that was coming in, other guys that was just learning the system because they had just got a new coach. So they had to learn the whole system that I already knew. So I'm a rookie here teaching older guys about the route tree, about this.
Because you knew it.
Because I knew it. So.
Yeah. What was the biggest lesson you learned about playing in the NFL?
Early or now?
Throughout your career, what's the biggest thing you've learned about how to be a successful player, wide receiver in the NFL?
I say work ethic. I think a lot of things that go into the unseen, the things that people don't see, the things that the hard work that you put in the off season, leaving the training facility and going get on the table and having someone work on your body, massages, all of the little things, the little details, the off season, taking time off. I finally now have a routine where I know I need to take a little bit more time off, but in my younger days, it was no time off. It was maybe a week, and before the Super Bowl, I was already training for the next season, and then the hits started adding up and the years started adding up, and now I need a couple weeks, but I think that was what it was, just being consistent in my training, in my approach, in my work ethic, and preparing for the season. That when the season really came, it was kind of easy.
When the trade happens, what's your first thought?
Initially, just wow, heartbroken a little bit, thinking that I did nothing wrong in Miami. Thinking that I produced since I've been there. I probably, outside of my rookie year, I maybe was the leading receiver every year on the team, was a leader in the locker room, on the field, off the field, and.
Were you surprised by it?
It wasn't that I was surprised, because there were talks leading up into the draft, and then they allowed me to go look for trade partners and this and that, and I almost felt like it was a tactic to just get my number down, and I kind of was set on my number, just being the things that I did, there in Miami, and I didn't really see a reason to take a pay cut to play there.
Yeah. What were your thoughts of Cleveland before you ever came here? What were your thoughts of coming to play for the Browns? Because at that time, the Browns' image in the National Football League was as low as the teams can go. Right. And you decide that I can make this work.
Yeah. I didn't initially have a thought. We played Cleveland that my last year, and where we beat Cleveland, and I just remember, they won a game on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve or something like that. And it was 1-30 or something like that in the last couple of years, and I'm like, well, good for them, you know what I mean? But
what am I getting into?
Yeah, so that was my initial thought, and then afterwards, up until the trade, happens. I get traded here, and it's again, I don't know really what to expect. I know that this place has history. I know there are a lot of great players here, and then I see Tyrod names come on the ticker, and I see the Marius Randall name come on the ticker. I'm like, okay.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, all right. Like that's the start.
Sure.
You got a quarterback, you got a defensive back, you got a receiver, then see Carlos Hyde name come, and like, all right. Like, I know Duke Johnson was here, so I knew they had some talent already. And that point, I was starting to get excited.
Yeah. When you came here and they made that 5-year commitment to you, what did that mean to you? How did that affect your outlook on the game of football?
I learned with the trade that this is a business, and it's love in it, but it's not love in it, and I can give my all to a place, but, sometimes that's not enough. And when I got here, just the respect, just the gratitude, one of the things that I told Odell when he got traded here was like, man, when I first walked in this building, I felt the love. I felt like the people wanted me to be here, and that's one thing that, I didn't always feel, and to sign my deal here for 5 years, for me, it was something that kind of, it did something for me, but it was more for my family.
Yeah.
It was more for my family to have that security, but also to have that freedom for when I take the field. I'm not worried about anything.
Right.
I could just go.
Yeah.
And which I do anyway, but
it's easier to do it now.
Yeah, it's easier to do it now.
Take me, Jarvis, to the moment that you knew, and you probably knew long before the media and the fan base, but take me back to the moment you knew that the Browns had acquired Odell.
So I'm at my Florida house. I'm in a house in Florida. JD calls me, and he's like, "Is your boy serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's serious." Like that. Within 15 minutes, I call Odell, and I'm like, "Bro, I really want you to be a part of this. I know this might be a difficult decision for you right now, but just trust me." And he hangs up, he talks to his agent, talks to his mom. The trade goes through. In the meantime, in the process, JD calls me back on speaker with Coach Freddie, and they're like, "Dogs gotta eat, right?" And I'm like, "It's done?" And he's like, "It's done." And I call O back. I just started crying on the phone. I'm calling everybody I know in my phone, everybody that would answer. Like, "Do you see this? You see this? Look what they did." And just, it was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Yeah.
Exciting time. I scared my kids, all that. I was screaming.
Dad, what happened?
Crying, everything, every emotion.
Yeah. So I know you're in the middle of it, and you still got a lot of good years of football to play, and you write your legacy every Sunday. But when you're done and you take those cleats off for the last time, what do you want the first couple of paragraphs of your bio to say? Jarvis Landry was what as a football player?
He was a leader. He was a team-first guy. He blocked. He caught passes, obviously. He worked hard. He had a great work ethic. He pushed other guys to be great. And hopefully a couple championships behind that. A couple division championships, a couple Super Bowl championships.
If a chapter is a season, how many chapters do you have left?
Till the wheels fall off. That's what I say. That's what me and O say all the time. Till the wheels fall off. Till I can't do it.
More.
So I can't go no more.
Jarvis, thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jarvis Landry, our latest sit down on Club 46, driven by Bridgestone. Please make sure to join us next week when we sit down with another great Cleveland Brown. Until then, I'm Jay Crawford. We'll see you soon.